Thanks for joining us here on the Retirement Income Source. We're glad you have joined us here for this hour, where it's always about investing for income the old-fashioned way. I'm Tim Sparks. Our show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group, a financial firm right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky. You know, this show is for you, the listener. What we teach and what we talk about here on the show is based on my 20 years of experience on what to do and, most importantly, what not to do. Why? Because after you've examined anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 plans over the years, and the plans that people bring into our office that they're either currently in or they're thinking they're going to be going into, what they have what they're finding out is maybe the road they're on is not the one that they want to be on. And to be honest with you, the first step is to learn and to be intentional, especially when it comes to retirement. You see, whether you're a pre-retiree who wants to get it right or a retiree who wants to end well, all I can say is you must be diligent. Don't let go of that steering wheel. Get informed. Today, we're going to talk about the Lucky Retirement Plan. You see, there's so many options out there for people, investors, retirees, pre-retirees, and, let's just kind of keep this simple. You're trying to make returns on your money. And matter of fact, if you need income, you definitely want to make sure you make a return on that money year in and year out. That's the reason why I say most people choose the lucky option. The lucky option means you're relying on growth and growth alone. And you may not even know it. And what you don't know may hurt for some people. They probably don't want to be in that position, but they may not know it. But if you want to get mileage out of your principal, talking about your balance, you should be considering how much you're going to be getting in interest and dividends. Now, I talk about that a lot, but believe it or not, I have not found any really true silver bullets when it comes to retirement. And it doesn't really matter if you had visited 10 financial advisor offices, there's always going to be a different philosophy, or at least you think there is. You may feel good while you're in the meeting, you may feel compelled, but this is the way to go. But the bottom line is there is that income going to be coming from. Where is it going to be coming from? That's the question you have to ask yourself. You see, you want to be armed so that way you can have more control. A lot of times people give up control, they get in the back seat of the cab and are being presumptuous that all financial advisors, if they call themselves retirement planners, are just basically putting you on the right path. And I hope they are, to be quite honest with you. But, you have to understand how money works and the mechanics of it. That's the reason why we committed a lot of time on this show, because I'm going to be honest with you. One of the reasons that I gave up the philosophy of total return, which is the philosophy that most advisors use, I know this because that's what most firms tout. It's easier. We call it the disease of ease. Just, hey, put together a plan that's involving mutual funds or exchange traded funds, and, don't worry about anything. We'll take care of it because, overall, we should be okay. And I don't like the word overall, we should be okay. I don't know about you. That means there's some doubt even whenever I even say that. I don't like even doubt. I want to be able to minimize doubt. So for many years, probably about 14 years in my practice of giving people advice in retirement, I knew something wasn't right. I'm offering mutual funds, trying to be clever, hopefully, we're going to get average returns at a certain level, whatever that may be, and clients wasn't really mad because they really didn't at me because they really didn't know whether I was right or wrong. But at the end of the day, I was actually setting them up just in case I was wrong. And the thing is, I don't like the idea that I could be wrong. And I knew when I'm looking at the options that are available, I started dissecting it, so to speak, to be able to determine, hey, if they're going to take out a withdrawal, and if it's in excess of what this yield, kind of like a CD, if it pays 4%, if they're going to take in excess of that, then that means they're going to have to dip into their principal. And to be quite honest with you, the CD may make more sense in one sense because at least you don't have to worry about any volatility. But when you're dealing with volatile investments and you're only getting 1% to 2%, and then I'm having to charge a fee in addition to that, really and truly, that is a lucky retirement plan. Everything's going to be relying on my crystal ball, and that was what I wanted to avoid. My dad always told me, he said, son, and he told me this when I was about 14 years old when I was following my peers. And we all probably have done that. We always are going to hang around people that are kind of like us and so forth. But I was following our peers in the wrong way. And, and he's always been somebody that's always given me a wealth of information and great advice. And he told me one day, he said, son, instead of following, why won't you lead for a change? And I didn't really think about that for quite a long time until kind of, I was thinking about it this morning as I was coming to the office to actually record a show. And when it comes right down to it, I've been following the advice of what the herd of financial advisors are following. Think about that for a moment. We all follow herds to some degree. And believe it or not, we feel comfortable when we're in the majority, not the minority. Because we don't want to be somebody that's out there trying to do something like a three-legged pig or something like that, and we're on trial. We want to be like everybody else. If everybody loses, then that's okay. We're all comfort in numbers. Well, to be quite honest with you, just like my peers, what I learned, that's not true. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not going to get ahead by doing the things as I was going to do by following our peers. And I got thinking, I said, wait a minute, that's kind of similar to what we do when it comes to financial advice. I said, so I want to step aside for a moment, take some observation, and think outside the box. And so when I started looking at mutual funds, and so they're so deficient when it comes to income, and so does a lot of exchange traded funds, it's time to actually look at it from a different point of view. Because at the end of the day, what makes up the mutual funds? That's right, individual stocks, individual bonds, and cash. That's what people have primarily that makes up their portfolios today. But as we get through this show today, the formula for a successful retirement is understanding total return equals I plus G. Because everything you put your money into, no matter where it is, you have to ask yourself, you're the one that's responsible for your retirement, not me, you are. You got two ways you make money on your money. Income plus growth. Now the first is more important than the second when you're going in retirement. And I got a commission report that actually spells that out. If you call 888-930-1080, again, that's 888-930-1080, we'll mail this to you or even email it, whichever you prefer. Again, that number is 888-930-1080. You're listening to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, and today we are talking about lucky retirement plans. So earlier I was talking about what had to change, even my own practice, about 5 or 6 years ago. And the reason I changed is because I wanted to get our clients a pay raise by owning stocks and bonds versus the option of spending their principal and getting very little income from the tools that I was using for many, many years. Because I want to minimize or even eliminate the chance of ever spending principal. I mean, to me, that's a recipe to decrease my chances that my money's going to not last that long. Again, keep in mind, I'm trying to improve my batting average. If I'm somebody like Tony Gwynn or Pete Rose, for example. In order to improve my batting average, I got to be able to do things that everybody else doesn't do. And so earlier I was talking about, my dad told me about, son, do not follow the herd. It's the same concept, very similar to what I'm talking about, which is what I was doing. And I can tell you right now, majority of the portfolios of the people coming in here are still doing the same herd philosophy. It's not your fault. It's the financial advice that's been given today. Nobody's willing to have or has the courage enough to be able to make the transition. And I got to thinking, why is it that they don't want to make the transition to investing for income? Well, first of all, it's going to require research that is different. Mutual funds, you got to keep in mind, exchange traded funds, the research is already done. The problem is, it's not necessarily the research is not important. The problem is it's the portfolios or that are inside those mutual funds are made up of individual stocks. And by the way, you probably don't know this, but mutual funds are made up of stocks or bonds, whatever instrument that you're trying to use. And of course, at the end of the day, if you add all of them stocks up, if it's got 500 stocks in it, a lot of them companies are not paying any income at all. Matter of fact, I'm willing to bet a lot of people out there probably would get rid of some of the stocks if they knew they were actually invested in them, because maybe they're having issues, maybe they're having business issues. You see, what we do is going to be a lot more transparency, because now you're going to know what really is going on in the markets, and especially what even goes on in the mutual fund. But the only good news is it's actually managed by an analyst, and an analyst manages also your mutual funds or exchange traded funds. But the good news is it's transparent. You can actually see what you own for a change. I'm willing to bet you majority of you don't even know what you have inside of your mutual funds. Is that bad? No. But it's not good either, because keep in mind, you're trying to give yourself the most income so that way you decrease spending the shares that you own, because it took you 30 to 40 years to accumulate wealth. And unfortunately, if you do it wrong and you're selling shares, or if you run across a correction or a recession, you may find yourself actually running out of money before you run out of life. In other words, you're going to catch yourself accelerating your principal faster than it took to actually accumulate it, which may have taken you 30 or 40 years. So I got a great book I want you to get in your hand. It's our book, one I just recently got released here a few weeks ago, on income first methods. Everything we talk about on the show to get the most mileage out of your money, called the retirement income shift. The shift has to take place when you go into retirement, and it's not too late if you are still or are already in retirement. Might as well fix the problem while markets, the good news is still ahead. Well, this was Amazon bestseller just about a week after its release, and it's still Amazon's bestseller in 4 categories. I got a free copy for the first 5 callers of today's retirement income source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail this book out to you if you're one of the first 5 callers. Free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. You're listening to the Retirement Income Source with Tim Sparks. We'll be right back. Your radio is set to the Retirement Income Source with Tim Sparks, and our show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky. Today we're talking about the Lucky Retirement Plan. But before I go into some of the meat of this segment, I want to let you know that we have a book signing coming up in December. And we're going to be mailing it out to everybody that's actually reached out to our radio show in the past. And it's going to be at 2 local libraries here. I want to say December 10th and December 12th. But also, if you're probably going down the road right now and you would like to know more about what it is I'm talking about, maybe you only have a few minutes of listening time, you can always go to our website, www.sparks, that's plural, SPARKS, FG, which is financialgroup.com. And believe it or not, right when you go on the first page, you can scroll down slightly, you'll see the most recent radio shows, including this one right here that I'm talking about today. Or you can listen to even the past radio shows. Keep in mind, the goal is repetition. Repetition is where we learn the most. And also, you can also scroll down a little bit more, and you can actually schedule an appointment where you can actually come in the office and just compare specifically what you're doing versus what you could be doing. Doesn't mean you're going to hire us because of that, but at least you're going to be armed with more knowledge and a lot of experience that I've had with working with clients that we've helped being successful, and allows you to be able to know whether you're on the right track. Because we've had people come in that did not even know they were on the right track, and we've had other people that are definitely not on the right track, and we're going to have to do some changes now. You got to keep in mind, being proactive, people, is the best way to actually get on the path you're on. You could be slightly tilted to the left or slightly tilted to the right when you're, like if you was to go from here to the moon, and you could be hundreds of miles away and you wouldn't even hit your destination. And the last thing you want to do is to be off. And sometimes, we help people to pay off debts and so forth that they can actually do now they didn't even know they can do. And especially for those of you, if you've got 401ks are laying dormant, maybe you've kept them in your prior plans, or maybe you have IRAs or Roth IRAs or even brokerage accounts, and you're not even sure if you're really making money on money residually, which actually helps people to be able to use that for debt management. Debt management meaning paying off bills and so forth. I'm sure most of you have probably heard Dave Ramsey, and I like the idea of paying off debt. Going into retirement with no debt is extremely critical. And with that being said, let's talk about a particular client that came in our office from the radio, and she wants to pay off her home. Now, mind you, she's 5 years from retirement, and her total accounts, or his total accounts, excuse me, I'm going to say her, his total accounts are roughly a little over $400,000. And she needs $130,000 to pay off her house, or his house. So they're retiring again in 5 to 6 years, and I know there's no way, based on their spending, his spending, that they can actually achieve this by paying off the house now. Now, I like paying off the home. I'm not saying that at all. Being debt-free is extremely important. But sometimes we got to figure out which one's more important. Having the most income in retirement, or even though you may decrease your expenses, and then taking money that's going to be taxable and actually at a large amount may not make sense. So basically, I went up on the board and I said, you need $130,000 to pay off the house. It's going to save you $11,000 a year in principal and interest of your payment. Taxes and insurance, as we know, don't go away. So I'm always interested in how much that is. Well, I also know that he needs about $80,000 in 5 years. We've already did the inflation adjustments and everything to be able to make retirement work. Only thing that he has in his corner is Social Security of around $40,000 a year. So we need $40,000 from the portfolio. Well, the $400,000 401ks and IRAs combined, if you want to net $130,000, you got to subtract an additional $40,000 for federal and state income taxes. And again, those are estimations. She will run that by her accountant to see if that is fairly accurate. Another thing, too, it puts her in a different tax bracket, up in the fifth tier, which is around 30-something%. So that's not a problem. Now, if she came in here, she had maybe $1.2 million, it may make sense. But I'm still not even a proponent of doing it in that essence. And of course, that was not her situation or his situation. He's in a single. He's single, so he's not married. So he's in the single tax bracket, which we know single tax bracket is taxes are a lot higher, with the thresholds being a lot less. So here's my point. I told him, I said, listen, you're going to have to take out $170,000 of your $400,000, which leaves you only $230,000. Now you've lost your income opportunity and growth opportunity on that $170,000. You got to take in consideration just to save $900 a month. you got to keep in mind there's two ways of looking at anything, right? There's more than one way to skin a cat, but we're trying to figure out what makes most sense, because that's what exactly he was wanting to know. But before we go any further, I want to get a commission report in your hand called the Retirement Risk Report, which is a report that we actually give to people that call in a radio show or workshops and so forth to see if they're either on track or if they're getting the income they need and desire. Well, it's also true when it comes to debt management and everything else. So if you would like to get this commission report, call 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail this to your email at whichever you prefer. Again, that's 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, and today we're talking about the retirement or lucky retirement plan. You know, when it comes to retirement and when it comes to having luck, you really do have to have luck. You got to, you're assuming, being presumptuous when you're going forward. By the way, going forward means nobody knows the future. We can look back and think it's what's going to happen in the future, but unfortunately, don't hinge your hopes on going backwards. Why? Because going backwards has nothing about going forward. It's the unknown. And so right out of the gate, that requires luck, especially if you are income deficient in your own portfolio and you're still relying on stocks to get you through retirement. Stocks is kind of a lucky strategy. You got to have luck on your side. And as Clint Eastwood once said, do you feel lucky? With that being said, let's talk a little bit more about the dilemma of this particular guy that came in that's wanting to pay off their house now. And I get the point. And I was, my job is to hear them out, not to discourage them. And I said, at the end of the day, it's ultimately your money, your decision. But I'm going to tell you what I would do. And I just try to make sense out of everything. And I said, because think about it for a moment. If you take $170,000 to pay off a $130,000 mortgage, because you're going to save $900 a month. I said, but the problem is, you've only got $230,000 left, and you need $40,000 a year in income in 5 or 6 years. I said, it's going to take, you're going to have to grow your money to $800,000 to do that. When as I was looking at the portfolio is not even designed to get that kind of growth, because at the same time, this guy is kind of somewhat conservative in his options. And not only that, he's not really getting a lot of income. So in theory, conservative does not mean you're going to double or triple your money. I mean, you're conning yourself if you think that's going to happen, especially if you're conservative. Yeah, you may save yourself $900 a month or $11,000 a year, but the thing is, though, we also took that in consideration when I was doing the top-down analysis. He still needs $80,000 a year pre-tax money, $40,000 coming from Social Security, the other $40,000 coming from the portfolio. So I'm just backing into this with a 5% withdrawal rate, which our clients can do in interest and dividends today. They're going to the money still has to grow to $800,000 to be able to get that kind of income. So I basically told them this. The solution's simple. Take your $400,000, invest it for dividend-paying stocks. Let's triple your income that you're making now, because you need growth and income to get to the level you're trying to get to. There's no promises here. But you can take those dividends each and every year and pay off your house 5 years faster, and at least when you go into retirement, you don't have to give up this money now, which helps you to avoid your bargaining power. Because see, if you got $200,000 and you made 10%, you made $20,000. Well, if you take the money that you saved and reinvest it, and let's just say the first year is $11,000 and you make 10%, well, how much did you make? Well, $1,100. See, your penny's profit is less. So it really didn't make sense, and that's what I was trying to tell this gentleman. But if you would like to learn more about income first methods, in other words, ways that you can even pay off debt, like I was trying to help this guy tried to understand, I want to get a book in your hand called The Retirement Income Shift, written by your host, Tim Sparks, Amazon bestseller for the last 3 weeks in 4 categories. And I got a free copy for the first 5 callers of today's retirement income source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080, and we'll mail this book out to you again if you're one of the first 5 callers. Free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source with Tim Sparks. We will be right back. You found the show that's all about retirement income. Welcome to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, your host, and our show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky. And today we're talking about the Lucky Retirement Plan. Not an intentional plan that gets you through the stock market, because you have to be intentional and you have to be defensive if you're going to rely on luck. Luck in of itself is all that's going to do is require the wind at your back while you're bicycling a bicycle downhill at the same time. And you know and I know the markets don't ever cooperate the way we want them to. We can will them to go up, but it doesn't mean that they will. And so the question you have to ask yourself, do you feel lucky going through retirement? And I get it. I can be optimistic and still be broke. So I really want to have a plan B. And we have to think about the fundamentals. If you want to get growth, first of all, you got to get income first, because it's the last thing you want to do is to sell your principal. And unfortunately, a Lucky Retirement Plan is a recipe for selling principal, and you're going to do it monthly. It doesn't matter what the markets do, you are going to do it monthly. If the markets go up, you sell less shares. That's right, you're selling shares and not buying shares like you were in accumulating assets. And when the markets go down, you sell more shares to come up and make up the same amount of income that you need in retirement. See, Lucky Retirement Plan, in other words, you're relying on growth, and there's nothing wrong with relying on growth. There's always an appropriate time to have growth in your portfolio. But if income is what you're trying to solve, the only way you can do that is either with real estate or stocks that pay dividends. That way you get growth and income. The problem is what people are doing is they're picking the most desirable stocks out there, Amazon, Apple, and Nvidia, and all these companies, which are really non-income instruments. You can own those, but you shouldn't be using those type of stocks or including growth funds for the purpose of income, not unless you're okay with selling some of those shares each and every month to come up with your income. Because keep in mind, the income is consistently and constantly coming out of your portfolio. And if that's where it's coming from, keep in mind, I don't know if I want to have a retirement plan where I'm always relying on the markets having to go up, and I don't want to have luck on my side. I need to be more intentional. So in other words, it really just depends on your philosophy. If your philosophy is going to be selling, you also have to be concerned, will you run out of money? Because that plan will not work. Because you got to keep in mind, the pendulum is different when you're dealing with growth stocks. Growth stocks are really good to have when they really go up in value, and we've actually experienced that in the last 17, 18 months. Well, anytime something goes up, that means also it's going to eventually come down, right? That's the problem with growth. So in other words, look at the pendulum where you got 3 o'clock position, you got the 9 o'clock position. The 9 o'clock position means it swings in a positive way. The 3 o'clock position means it starts taking some of the growth back away, and your portfolio gets back down to where you don't want it to go. And that's exactly what the pendulum does. If you're going to invest in that way where you can keep in mind, you're trying to get growth. You can't get growth by spending it, so you're better off to get dividends that pay you growth, that pay you income. Therefore, you can get growth because you're holding on to the shares. You're not selling shares to get the income. But instead of having the pendulum swinging from 3 to 9, your pendulum may be more like 4 to 8, or maybe even a little less than that. So in other words, you want less swings if you want dividend paying stocks, because again, it's dividends. It makes all the importance of when it comes to getting income in retirement, because first of all, that's the problem you have. And if you go too growthier, then you're going to be spending, and not only that, you're going to be kind of like a laddering concept. You're going to be kind of climbing the ladder when the markets are going up, and then you're going to stop. And what I mean is you're taking income while you're going up that ladder because you feel good because everything is great, and then all of a sudden you stop, and then all of a sudden the markets come down. And if they come down, guess what? You're going to stop spending, or you're going to slow down spending, because you already know you're running some risk there if you don't do that. And to be quite honest with you, I don't want a tipsy-turvy spending when I'm in retirement. I need something reliable that's going to come in. You got to keep in mind, people, value stocks that have dividends in them and growth stocks that have very little to no dividends in them in the next 10 years are still going to average 8 to 10% in general. Doesn't mean they will, because we don't know we don't know exactly what the markets are, how they're going to land. But if we're trying to base everything on what we think is an average return, doesn't mean it's actually going to work out that way. We already know that life has a lot of curveballs. And the last thing we want to do is to have a retirement where we turn on our income and turn it off like a light switch. I mean, I can see it right now. Income needing to come from interest and dividends, and it's up to you or your advisor to provide you the defense you need just in case the markets don't actually cooperate. So the first thing you want to ask your advisor, and don't ask them. I don't want you to find out the hard way, because sometimes people become victims in the market because they really don't know what to say or ask. And believe me, a lot of times, in my point of view, to be able to give advice on mutual funds and exchange rate traded funds, it's so easy a caveman can do it. So in theory, this person needs to give you a legitimate response, and this is what I would ask. If I'm sitting there in front of somebody and after all, it's my money. I don't want this thing to screw up. And so I'm going to ask them, what is your defense that you provide just in case things don't actually cooperate? Because after all, we're talking about going forward. I don't care about your Monte Carlo simulations, all that are based on average returns. That don't mean anything, because the future has everything dependent on whether you're going to go into a negative environment or a flat environment or a really robust environment. I don't know about you, but that pendulum is going to swing in one of those three directions. Two of those three you don't want to actually be in. The other one would be great, but that's a marriage made in heaven, and it don't always work out that way. Because see, did you know that when you're getting paid interest and dividends for the stocks and bonds that you own, or the mutual funds that you own, or exchange traded funds you own, now you got to ask yourself, if you don't want to spend principal, how much dividends and interest am I getting, and will it equate to the amount of withdrawals that I'm taking out? The mutual funds and exchange traded funds, I hate to give y'all bad news, they don't pay enough income. They're very deficient in income, so therefore you have to rely on growth. You're going to sell shares. I hate to tell you this, get over it. You are going to sell shares. There is no plan B there other than to throw caution to the wind and sell your shares. So if you made a shift, what instruments do you use so that way the income you're taking out is appropriate for the withdrawal, therefore you're not spending your principal? That's key. That's how you get the most mileage out of your balance. It's all about your balance, and your balance can fluctuate, but it's the amount of income that you get. And I got a commission report I want to get in your hand called The Introduction to the Universe of Income Generating Financial Strategies. And this commission report can be yours if you call 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail this to you or email it to you, whichever you prefer. Again, that number is 888-930-1080. You're listening to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks, and today we're talking about the Lucky Retirement Plan. That's right. When I hear the word lucky, I think of Clint Eastwood's favorite quote, "Do you feel lucky?" Well, when you're in retirement, if you want to have luck at your back, avoid spending your principal. Just live off the interest and dividends. Here's the bad news. The amount of interest and dividends that you're making on your portfolio right now, because you're hoping to have luck at your back in an unknown future, which nobody knows what the returns are going to be, means you are going to be selling principal. If the markets keep going up, so far so good. It's kind of like jumping out of a 100-story building. If you're only 10 floors down, the good news is you haven't hit the bottom yet. So, and that's kind of the way it is because it's a day by day. I know people that sit and they look at the S&P 500, the Dow, and the NASDAQ almost on a daily basis. That could be nerve-wracking. That's not even what retirement's all about. You know, at the end of the day, there's only so much you have control over. You don't have control over whether you're going to get lucky or not. And if your plan is based on growth and growth alone, because your income is very deficient, that means you're relying on growth to replace what you've already sowed from the year before. And so you slowly but surely and in a cancerous way are depleting your principal. And I've never met anybody that likes to see their principal go down over time. People leave money on the table. It's blows my mind why that happens. And just because, I don't know, it's just because they just don't know. They don't know if, they're afraid maybe somebody's going to sell them on something that may be better and different, or maybe the advisors already said there's no such thing, or if they said, oh, I can do that, and they didn't. I don't know what the reason is, but I'm going to be honest with you. Just recently, I had a prospective client come in from the radio that's got, we'll just use a number of $1 million. There's a little bit more than that. Had $1 million, and they need it $45,000 a year. That's a 4.5% withdrawal rate. When we looked at the portfolio, which they were totally happy and content with, they were only getting about $9,000 a year in interest and dividends. And I told him, I said, with $9,000 a year means you're going to have to take out $3,000 a month from your own principal. And let me ask you a question. Whenever you were contributing to your 401k, was you putting in $3,000 a month? No. So that means this person has really got to make up not just the $3,000, but also the hopes is to get an inflation hedge. So I said, if you're wanting to make 8% and you're only getting 1% from dividends, your growth, you have to make 7% a year. That's just based on the average return, which never happens that way in a static way. You also have to make up the $3,000 a month in growth as well, in order for your portfolio to remain the same. And we know the markets never ever, paint a pretty picture on your statements. I've actually showed people where, hey, look at this market right here. Look what the total returns are. And we're all enamored by it. Hey, I made 26% last year and I'm up 17% this year. And everybody don't realize that, unfortunately, you don't get to keep that. That's not a sustainable return. That's just a return for right now. It feels good. And I'm going to be honest with you. We love it when the markets are going up, right? I've never met anybody that's actually saddened at the markets. It's kind of like going, you don't need to go to the doctor if you're not sick, so you feel pretty good. You just wipe your brow, well, we'll wait till tomorrow. Well, at the end of the day, you got to make that money back up, people. And emotions get the most of people when they're in retirement. And I know this because nobody's listening to this show right now that has probably been in retirement long enough to actually experience what 2001, 2, 3, or 2000 to 2002, which went down 50%, and 2008 and 2009 for about 19 months, it went down 60%. You haven't experienced that in retirement. You haven't been there yet to know what that feels like. But I can tell you right now, if you do, or if you want to go back and do a little research and ask maybe some people that's been in retirement that went through that, how did they get through it? Well, I can tell you right now, based on my experience, 100% of the time, not just, some percentage less, not unless they just had a ton of money to burn, most of the people had to stop spending. Well, that's not a real comforting statement to tell somebody that needs income in retirement. and they're now going to have to quit spending. It's almost like their steak pocket automatically got downsized to peanut butter and bologna. But all I want to tell you is you don't have to settle for less when you can get more. If you want to learn more about income first methods and not sacrifice growth, but actually it helps facilitate growth in the long run because you're not spending principal. Because when markets come back, you're going to bounce back because you own everything you started with. And so you got to get a great book, our book, The Retirement Income Shift, written by your host, Tim Sparks, Amazon bestseller last 3 weeks in a row since its release back in October. And it's in 4 categories in personal finance. And I got a free copy for the first 5 callers of today's retirement income source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail this book out to you if you're one of the first 5 callers. Free, no obligation book, 888-930-1080. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks. We'll be right back. You're tuned in to the Retirement Income Source. This is Tim Sparks. Our show is sponsored by Sparks Financial Group right here in the heart of the Bluegrass, Lexington, Kentucky. Today we're talking about the Lucky Retirement Plan. Well, it kind of has a ring to it, right? I don't know about you, every once in a while I love going to Vegas, but when it comes to my retirement, that's the last place I want to be, especially when it comes to my money. Because I don't know about you, but there's been times that, of course, I'm not a betting person, but I'm just going to go by some other people that I do know that has been. Whenever they start winning, they don't know when to stop. Then eventually they start losing, and then sometimes they walk away less than they started with. That's kind of like exactly the same problem people have in retirement. They're so optimistic, they think growth is the only way to get through retirement, and so unfortunately, they can become victims as the market does change for the worse. And you got to be prepared for that. Because think about it for a moment. Think about all the things you want to do in retirement besides just pay your bills. Most of us want to go above and beyond that, whether it's spend time traveling in an RV throughout the United States, which we have several people that do this, or spend 2 to 3 months as a snowbird down in Florida, which costs money, or it could be spending time with children and grandchildren, being able to assist children and grandchildren or help them with their college. There are so many things that I can come up with about the ideas of people and what they want it for in retirement. And it winds up really being a tall order. In order to be able to get all that in place, you got to be able to plan and plan correctly. Plan is a flippant word. There's a definitive way of planning, then there's a flippant way of planning. Just say, we're just going to do it, and then wind up running the risk, running out of money because nobody told you that you're actually using your resources, your portfolio, your balance to be able to do all these things. And if that balance is based on a lucky retirement plan, everything's based on growth, and when you stepped into retirement, so far so good growth that actually was at your back, you get a few years into it, what are you going to do if you take a 40% dip on $1 million portfolio? That's $600,000. Let's just say that you've already had a vacation planned or a trip planned to go somewhere, and you're on your trip. I'm willing to bet you, if that went, knowing the portfolio went down, that I'm willing to bet you're pretty stressed out. You probably can't even enjoy retirement because you're more worried about the loss that just now occurred. And whenever you get back, I'm willing to bet you that you're probably going to be a person that's probably going to be unpleasant to be around. Why? Because stress does many things to different people. It's kind of like being in a corner and Mike Tyson's beating the snot out of me, what I'm going to do is come out of that corner. I'm not going to sit there and just keep on letting him beat me up. Well, it's the same way it is when we come home and, the markets have actually beaten you up pretty good. $400,000 loss happened all of a sudden is not something that you can laugh about. I'm sure that you probably don't want to even think about having a loss, but if you set your portfolio up where you can experience that kind of loss, there is ways of finding that out. When do you want to find out about it? When it's too late, or would you like to know now so that way you know what to do? What is your plan B going to be? Well, there's a formula out there that if there happen to be a loss like that and you want to know more about what you could have done defensively, I want to get a report in your hand called Total Return equals I plus G. It's the I part that you're deficient at. And I can tell you right now, it gives me more peace of mind knowing that I'm prepared just in case that happens. I love a plan B. That way I'm not as stressed out. I can't eliminate stress because after all, you are in the stock market. But the good news is you can actually design your portfolio in a way where you can get the income you need to do the things you want to do, but at the same time be able to sleep and have peace of mind. And this commission report can be yours if you call 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080, and we'll mail this to your email at whichever you prefer. That number again, 888-930-1080. I'm Tim Sparks, and we're talking about the Lucky Retirement Plan. And so a Lucky Retirement Plan is more of a growth-like type scenario. In other words, if your portfolio, maybe you don't even know you got this type of portfolio, but if you're in growth, it's all based on luck. Why? Because the markets have to cooperate every year to be able to keep up with your spending habits. And if your spending habits are sometimes more or less, at the end of the day, all you're doing really is just withdrawing your principal. You're withdrawing less when the markets go up. You're withdrawing more when the markets go down. And so, I don't know about you. To me, that's a tipsy-turvy retirement plan, especially when it comes to income. But keep in mind, not if, but when the markets eventually will experience a recession or correction, I can only imagine what a retiree will feel like when the hammer drops because they were focusing on a Lucky Retirement Plan. I mean, think about it for a moment. 2013, I know I bring that up a lot, but guess what? There was no growth for 13 years. So in other words, the Lucky Retirement Plan would have actually turned into more of a plan that would have actually taken that retiree and put them in a position to where their income would have been permanently reduced in a rising inflationary environment. That doesn't make sense. And I can only ponder what kind of emotions that goes on in the mind of a retiree. I mean, think about it for a moment. I mean, what can happen? I mean, you need to think this through. It's not me. I've already thought this through. I already know what advice we give. That's the reason why we share this. But you have to think about it for a moment. What would you do if that happens? I mean, some people may have cash in the bank and so forth, and that may be cool. But at the end of the day, 13 years, how much cash you got in your bank? So let's just think about this for a moment. And not only that, to me, cash in the bank is for the purpose of, for emergencies only. It shouldn't be for the purpose of income now, but just because you chose the Lucky Retirement Plan, which means you're reducing your principal, and right now you're really going to run the risk if you start spending your principal in two different recessions that were pretty significant. So what would that be? I would say that you probably feel helpless. You really don't know what to do. Maybe impoverished, maybe you feel poor, maybe you feel angry, and you really don't know who to take it out on because, to be quite honest with you, it's not the financial advisor's fault. To some degree, it's also your fault as well. I mean, if you think about it for a moment, if you go to a car lot, and you're really not paying attention to sign, you just drive by, and of course I'm being silly here, but if you drive by a car lot and you look over and you see a car you know looks really nice, and so you just want to browse maybe on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday, and you go up to the car salesman and they approach you and they say, how can I help you today? And you say, well, I want a car that's economical, and I've been looking around to see what I can get for economical. I want something that I can get some snow tires in the winter, and and I want to have 4 seats. And you start describing kind of a conservative-like type car. Well, automatically, the salesman comes back and he's showing you a Porsche. And you're thinking about it for a moment, what in the world, what is this? Are we talking different language? Is this person Spanish or something like that? And so that's not the issue. So you look out and you look at the sign, you notice you're at a Porsche dealership. You see, you got to keep in mind, the advice you get will depend on whether you're just going to be a Porsche dealership type of advice, not being critical of Porsche, I like Porsche, but also, are you going to get a conservative-like type strategy that one is applicable to who you are in retirement? You don't want to become a victim of the market. Well, Income First Method, there's a great book out there I want to get in your hand. It's Income First Methods, Grow Second. You'll have your growth, but you got to be able to first focus on the income that you need. Therefore, you're not spending principal, because most people goes in retirement, their retirement plan is based on luck and spending principal. And this book is called The Retirement Income Shift, and the book is written by moi, your host, and it's Amazon bestseller in 4 categories of personal finance. And I got a free copy for the first 5 callers of today's retirement income source by calling 888-930-1080. Again, that's 888-930-1080. And we'll mail this out to you if you're one of the first 5 callers, free no obligation book, 888-930-1080. You have been listening to the Retirement Income Source, and we only had an hour to go over this, and I'm going to be honest with you, I spent at least an hour thinking about what I was going to say today, and I've only went over part of this. So we're going to continue this again next week, and we thank you for listening. We hope you got some information that was beneficial for you, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks for listening.